Part 1. Introduction. Picture this. Lisbon, 2000. A 15-year-old kid from Madeira Island stands at the hospital entrance of Sporting's medical facility. In his hands, a worn-out football he's gripping so tight his knuckles turn white. Behind that door, doctors are about to decide his fate. Not just his career, his life itself. His name is Cristiano Ronaldo, and in a few hours, he'll either become an ordinary construction worker or get a second chance to become a legend. Just a year ago, he left his native Madeira, an island in the middle of the Atlantic where football dreams rarely grow beyond the local league, came to the capital alone at 12 years old. Sporting's academy? That's a once-in-a-lifetime chance. New school, new friends, training until exhaustion. And just when everything was falling into place, when coaches finally started talking about him as a future first-team player, the diagnosis: tachycardia. His heart beats too fast. Even when he's sitting, just sitting on the locker room bench, his pulse races like after a sprint. His chest tightens, can't catch his breath. Doctors shake their heads. His mother, Dolores Aveiro, cries into the phone 1,000 kilometers away in Madeira. Maybe he needs to come home. Maybe this is a sign. A sign of what? The end of a dream at 15? In Sporting's medical office, a real debate unfolded. Club doctors looked at the skinny teenager and saw risk, legal risk, medical risk, reputational risk. What if something happens to him right on the pitch, in front of everyone? We can't take that responsibility. But there was one person who saw it differently. The academy's technical director insisted, "We've seen how he plays. This isn't an ordinary kid. If there's even a 1% chance to fix this, we have to try." The team made a decision: catheter ablation. A laser would cauterize the part of the heart that was going haywire, beating the wrong rhythm. Surgery scheduled for morning. 3 hours under anesthesia. The odds? Doctors spoke vaguely to the parents. It's a modern procedure, but at his age, with such physical demands, no one can give guarantees. And here he stands, ball in hands. Back in Madeira, his mother, brothers, sisters. In Lisbon, just him and his dream, which could end today on the operating table. In a few hours, Cristiano Ronaldo would either wake up with a working heart or hear the words he feared most: "Football is no longer for you." The surgery began in the morning, ended by evening. Ronaldo opened his eyes. What happened next changed not only his life, but world football itself. And it all started with a 15-year-old boy deciding not to give up when his own heart, it seemed, had betrayed him. This story is about how one medical crisis became the starting point of the greatest career in sports history, about how fear turned into strength, and about how sometimes to become a legend, you first need to simply survive. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit like. There are 7 more parts of this incredible story ahead, and what you'll learn next will shock you. But to understand just how critical the situation was, we need to go back a few months, to the moment when Ronaldo first felt that something was wrong.
Part 2. The diagnosis. A heart beating too fast. It all started at practice. Ordinary day, ordinary drills. Ronaldo runs across the field, and suddenly, it's like someone turned his heart to maximum speed. He stops, clutches his chest. The coach yells, "What's wrong with you?" But there's no way to explain it. Inside, a drum roll that won't stop. First visit to the doctor. The electrocardiogram shows what everyone feared: irregular, rapid rhythm, tachycardia. A medical term hiding a simple and terrifying truth: his heart isn't working right. Your heart beats too fast even at rest. The doctor says this calmly, professionally, but for a 15-year-old kid, these words sound like a sentence. Normal resting pulse? 60 to 80 beats per minute. Ronaldo's? Much higher. So high that his body is in constant stress, as if he's running a marathon just sitting in a chair. But the scariest part started later, at night. Ronaldo later recalled in interviews he'd wake up in the middle of the night from his own heartbeat, not from a nightmare, not from noise outside the window, from his heart beating so loud, so fast, that sleep became impossible. Imagine, you're lying in darkness, and inside your chest something is pounding like it's trying to break free. Fear, panic, loneliness, because there's no mother nearby, no family, only an empty room in the academy dormitory. Dolores Rivera, his mother, got a call in the middle of the night. The doctor's voice was careful, measured. "We need to conduct additional tests. The situation is serious." She later told journalists, "I didn't understand what it even was. Tachycardia. For me, it was just an incomprehensible word. Doctors spoke medical terms, and I heard only one thing. My son might not play football anymore." And here's where it gets really interesting. At Sporting's academy, whispers started. One of the coaches said out loud what many were thinking. Maybe we overworked him. Maybe this is our fault. Ronaldo trained like a man possessed, 2, sometimes 3 times a day, stayed after main sessions, worked on shots, dribbling, fitness. Coaches marveled at his determination, but nobody asked the question, can his body actually handle such load? A theory urged, unofficial but persistent. Can excessive load on a young heart trigger tachycardia? Medical research says usually tachycardia has a congenital nature, an anomaly in the heart's conduction system. But in Ronaldo's case, some still believe that the academy was the trigger. Too much, too early, too intense. Officially, doctors denied this. It's genetic predisposition, they told the parents. But the whispers in locker rooms didn't stop. One former academy player, years later, said in an interview, "We all knew that Chris trained like a madman. Sometimes you'd watch him and think, is he a robot? He never gets tired." And then, suddenly, the heart, and everyone started asking questions. Doctors conducted a full examination. Echocardiography, stress tests, repeat ECGs. The diagnosis was confirmed. Heart rhythm disorder requiring immediate intervention. Without surgery, risk of cardiac arrest right on the field. With surgery, risk that something could go wrong. Dolores remembered that phone conversation with her son. I asked him, "Are you scared?" He paused, then said, "Mom, I'm only scared of one thing, that they'll tell me I can't play anymore." For Ronaldo, this wasn't just a diagnosis, it was a crossroads. One road led to the operating room, to risk, to the unknown. Another, back to Madeira, to ordinary life, to forgotten dreams. But there was a third truth that doctors only told the parents. Without surgery, Ronaldo might not live to see 20. Tachycardia isn't just a fast heart, it's a ticking bomb. Every practice, every game, every sprint, a risk that the heart won't handle the load and will stop. Ronaldo signed the consent for surgery. He didn't know that in a few years they'd call him a machine, a man with perfect physical form. Back then, he was just a frightened teenager whose body betrayed him at the most important moment of his life. Write in the comments what city you're from and how old you are. Curious to know who's watching this story. End quote. Surgery was scheduled, but what exactly is catheter ablation, and why was this method chosen for a 15-year-old footballer?
Part 3. The surgery. The laser that saved a career. Morning of the operation. Sporting's Hospital, Lisbon. Ronaldo lies on a gurney in pre-op. He's wearing a hospital gown that hangs loose on the skinny 15-year-old's body. A nurse checks the IV. The anesthesiologist writes something in the chart. Routine for them. For him, moment of truth. Count backwards from 10, the anesthesiologist says. Ronaldo starts. 10, 9, 8, then darkness. Catheter ablation. Sounds like something from science fiction, but at the turn of the 2000s, this was cutting-edge cardiac technology. Imagine, instead of cutting open the chest, opening the pericardium and operating on an exposed heart, doctors make a tiny puncture in the femoral artery. Through this entry point, thinner than a pencil, they insert a catheter, a long, flexible tube with a laser at the end. The catheter travels up through the vessels, like a submarine through underwater tunnels, past the femoral artery, through the iliac, into the aorta, and finally, to the heart. The entire journey is controlled by real-time X-ray. Doctors see on the monitor exactly where the catheter tip is, how it moves inside a living, beating heart. And then the most important part begins, finding the problem zone. Tachycardia is caused by a tiny section of heart tissue that conducts electrical impulses incorrectly. It's like a short circuit in an electrical network. One faulty node and the entire rhythm goes haywire. The operations task, find this node and destroy it.
Laser. The temperature at the catheter tip rises to 50 to 60 degrees Celsius. The surgeon presses the laser to the problem tissue section and cauterizes it. Ablation, literally burning. Sounds barbaric, but it's the only way to stop the wrong signals. The tissue that caused tachycardia turns into a tiny scar that no longer conducts electricity. Surgery lasts 3 hours, maybe 4. Time flows strangely when you're under anesthesia. For Ronaldo, it's an instant. He closed his eyes in the morning and opened them in the evening. For the doctors, it's a marathon of concentration. One mistake and the consequences are irreversible. Dolores Aveiro sits in the corridor, waits, prays, checks her watch every 5 minutes. She later recalled in an interview, "He went in the morning and came out in the evening. I thought it would take an hour, maybe 2, but when 3 hours passed, I started to panic. I walked up to the operating room door and listened. Silence, only the hum of equipment. And then the door opens. The surgeon comes out, removes his mask, smiles. Everything went well. He'll wake up in an hour." Ronaldo opens his eyes in the recovery room. First thing he feels, dull pain in the groin where the puncture was. Second, strange silence in his chest. No, not silence, the right rhythm. Even, calm, controlled. His heart beats the way it should have bet always. "Mom?" The first word he says. Dolores enters the room, sees him awake, and starts crying. But now, these are tears of relief. Recovery after catheter ablation usually takes several days. Minimally invasive procedure means minimal trauma. No incisions, no stitches on the chest, just a tiny puncture covered with a bandage. Ronaldo spends the night in the hospital under observation. Monitors track every heartbeat. Rhythm is stable, no deviations. The next day, doctors allow him to stand. He takes a few steps around the room, carefully, slowly. Waits for his heart to race into a mad gallop again. But no, everything is calm. "When can I return to training?" That's the first question he asks the doctor. The doctor looks at him with a slight smile. "In a week, maybe 2. First light jogging, then we'll see." Ronaldo nods. In his head, there's already a plan. 1 week is too long. A few days later, he's already in the academy gym, not on the field, too early. But he does light exercises, stretching, walks on the treadmill. Doctors are astonished by the speed of recovery. One of them joked he returned to training faster than his mom could bake a pie. This became legend within the club. Coaches watch him cautiously, warily. They remember how he clutched his chest on the field, remember the panic, emergency calls, urgent consultations with doctors. Now before them is the same skinny teenager with different eyes. In them, no fear. In them, hunger. "I lost a month of training," Ronaldo tells his coach. "I need to catch up." 2 weeks after surgery, he's back on the field. Full training session, sprints, dribbling, shots on goal. Heart works like a Swiss watch, even, precise, without failures. Doctors call it a miracle of modern medicine. Ronaldo calls it a second life. His mother calls it God's blessing. But the truth is, it was simply a high-tech procedure performed by professional surgeons at the right moment for the right patient. A laser cauterized a tiny section of tissue, a few millimeters, and changed everything. The operation cost the club several thousand euros, a small sum for a professional football club. But this investment would pay off in a few years with hundreds of millions. Manchester United, Real Madrid, Juventus, they would all pay for a player whose heart once nearly failed him. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit like. On paper, the operation was successful, but what was going on in 15-year-old Ronaldo's head all this time? How did he cope with fear, and what changed inside him after that day?
Part 4. Psychological Battle. Fear, Hope, Determination. There's a thing they don't tell you about when your body betrays you at 15. It's not the physical pain. It's not even the fear of death. It's the voice in your head that whispers, maybe you're not special. Maybe you're just fragile. Ronaldo heard that voice every night before the surgery. He'd lie in his academy dorm room staring at the ceiling and run through scenarios. What if the surgery fails? What if they fix the heart but something else breaks? What if he comes back to the field and his teammates see him differently? Not as the fearless kid who never stops running, but as the sick one, the weak one. His roommate at Sporting later recalled in an interview, "Cristiano didn't sleep much those weeks. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and see him sitting by the window, just looking out. I asked him once, 'Are you okay?' He said, 'I'm thinking about what happens if I can't play anymore. Not, what if I die? What if I can't play?'" That's the mindset. For Ronaldo, losing football wasn't just losing a career, it was losing identity. Before the surgery, anxiety consumed him. His hands would shake during team meetings. He'd start a sentence and forget where it was going. Tachycardia doesn't just mess with your heart, it messes with your head. Constant adrenaline, constant fight or flight response. Your body thinks you're in danger 24/7, even when you're just sitting in a classroom. Dolores would call him every evening. "How are you feeling?" Always the same question, and he'd always lie. "I'm fine, Mom, don't worry." But she could hear it in his voice, the tremor, the uncertainty. One of his youth coaches at Sporting, who watched him closely during those months, said, "We saw a change. Before the diagnosis, Cristiano was cocky, almost arrogant. After, he became quiet, not weak, quiet, like he was conserving energy for something bigger." The night before surgery, Ronaldo made a deal with himself. He sat alone in the hospital room. They'd admitted him early for pre-op prep, and he wrote in a small notebook. Nobody knows exactly what he wrote. He's never shown those pages to anyone, but years later, in an interview, he mentioned it. "I wrote down everything I wanted to achieve. Not I hope or I wish, I wrote I will. Because if I survived that table, if that laser did its job, I wasn't going to waste the second chance." The surgery changed more than his heart rhythm, it rewired his brain. After the operation, doctors expected him to be cautious, maybe even fearful. Athletes who go through cardiac procedures often develop anxiety about their hearts. They feel phantom palpitations. They panic during intense training. It's PTSD, essentially. Your body remembers the terror.
Not Ronaldo. 2 weeks post-surgery, he's back on the training pitch. The medical staff is watching him like hawks, monitoring every sprint, every jump. And what does he do? He trains harder than before. Longer sessions, extra work after practice. One of the physios pulled him aside. "You need to slow down. Your body needs time." Ronaldo's response? "My body had 15 years to be normal. Now it works. I'm not wasting time." That's when everyone realized the surgery didn't just fix a physical problem, it created a psychological monster. Psychologists who study elite athletes talk about something called post-traumatic growth, when trauma doesn't break you, but makes you stronger, more focused, more resilient. Ronaldo became a textbook case. The fear of losing football made him obsessed with keeping it. The vulnerability of lying on an operating table made him determined to never feel weak again. His teammates noticed the change. One of them said, "Before the surgery, Cristiano was talented but lazy sometimes. He'd skip extra training if he was tired. After, never. He became a machine. We'd finish practice, go to the locker room, and he'd still be on the field, working on free kicks." His mother noticed too. "He called me less frequently after the surgery," Dolores recalled. "Not because he didn't love me, but because he was focused. Before, he needed reassurance. After, he had it inside himself." But here's the truth they don't talk about much. Ronaldo was still scared. Years later, in a rare moment of vulnerability during an interview, he admitted, "For months after the surgery, every time my heart beat a little fast, from running, from excitement, I'd panic for a second. Is it happening again? I never told anyone because I didn't want them to see weakness, but inside, I was terrified it would come back." That fear became fuel. Every training session was proof the surgery worked. Every game was evidence he wasn't fragile. Every goal was a middle finger to the diagnosis that tried to end him at 15. The psychological battle wasn't a single fight, it was a daily war.
and he won it by refusing to acknowledge doubt. Sports psychologists who studied Ronaldo's career point to this period as the origin of his legendary discipline. The insane diet, the obsessive training regimen, the refusal to drink alcohol, the cryo chambers, the recovery protocols, the body fat percentage lower than most professional athletes. All of it traces back to one core fear. My body tried to quit on me once. I will never let it happen again. His former coach at Manchester United once said, "People think Cristiano's discipline is about ego. It's not. It's about control. When you've felt your own heart betray you, when you've been that close to losing everything, you become obsessed with controlling every variable you can." The surgery gave him a working heart. The psychological battle gave him an unbreakable mind. And that combination, physical resilience plus mental obsession, is what separates good players from legends. Ronaldo didn't just survive tachycardia, he weaponized the trauma, turned vulnerability into invincibility, made fear his training partner. Write in the comments what city you're from and how old you are. Curious to know who's watching this story. The psychological transformation was complete. But what about the physical side? How did the surgery actually affect his performance? Did doctors keep monitoring him? And what did those medical reports reveal?
Part 5. Recovery and Return. The New Start. Day 7 post-surgery. Sporting's training complex. Early morning. The grass is still wet with dew. The rest of the academy players won't arrive for another hour, but there's one figure already on the pitch, ball at his feet, moving slowly, carefully, testing. Cristiano Ronaldo takes his first real touch of a football since the operation. He doesn't sprint, doesn't attempt any tricks, just rolls the ball forward with his right foot, follows it, stops it with his left. Simple, basic. The kind of drill 6-year-olds do. But for him, right now, it's everything. His hand instinctively goes to his chest, feels the heartbeat. Steady, normal, not the wild gallop that used to terrify him. Just rhythm. The rhythm of a working heart. And in that moment, something clicks in his brain. It's real. I'm back. The doctors had said 2 weeks minimum before field work. Ronaldo made it 7 days. When the medical staff found out, they were furious. You could damage the catheterization site, you could cause complications. But the damage was done. He'd already proven to himself that his body worked. His youth coach at Sporting remembered that first real training session. We were all nervous, watching him like he was made of glass. Every time he accelerated, we held our breath. But Cristiano? He played like nothing ever happened. Actually, no, he played harder, more intense, like he was making up for lost time. And that's exactly what he was doing. See, most athletes who survive medical scares become cautious. They protect themselves, play it safe. Not Ronaldo. He went the opposite direction. If his body could betray him once, he'd work it so hard it would never dare to do it again. The first month back was a revelation. Coaches started noticing things they hadn't seen before. Ronaldo staying after practice for extra shooting drills. Ronaldo in the gym on rest days. Ronaldo asking the nutritionist detailed questions about protein intake, recovery meals, hydration protocols. One of the academy nutritionists later said, "Before the surgery, Cristiano ate like a typical Portuguese teenager. Pastries, fried foods, whatever. After, he started asking me to design meal plans. At 15, we'd never had a youth player that obsessed with nutrition." The surgery didn't just fix his heart, it gave him a blueprint for control. Think about it. When you're 15 and your own body malfunctions, you feel powerless. The only way to regain power is to control everything you can. Diet, controlled. Training, controlled. Sleep, controlled. Every variable that could affect performance became something he could optimize, manage,
perfect. His teammates thought he was crazy. "We're kids," one of them said in an interview years later. "We wanted to play PlayStation, eat junk food, stay up late." Cristiano was going to bed at 9 p.m. and eating grilled chicken and vegetables. We made fun of him, called him the monk. He didn't care.
Because while they were being kids, he was building the foundation of a career that would last 20-plus years at the highest level. 3 months post-surgery, Ronaldo was back to full training, not just participating, dominating, faster than before, stronger than before, more confident than before. The academy coaches started whispering among themselves, what if the surgery made him better? Not physically. The ablation didn't enhance his heart, it just fixed it. But psychologically, mentally, that's where the transformation happened. The kid who thought he might lose football forever now treated every training session like it was his last chance. There's a story, possibly apocryphal, but it captures the essence, about a rainy afternoon training session. Everyone else was miserable, wanting to go inside. Ronaldo was doing extra sprints in the mud. The coach asked him, "Why are you torturing yourself?" Ronaldo's answer, "Because my heart works now, and I'm not wasting it." 6 months after surgery, Sporting's first-team scouts started watching academy sessions more closely. Not for the usual prospects, for Ronaldo. At 16, he was outperforming 18-year-olds. His technical ability had always been there, but now there was something else. Hunger, desperation, the kind you can't teach. His first touch after surgery, that careful, tentative ball roll in the morning dew, had evolved into something unstoppable. Now he was taking on 3 defenders at once. Now he was scoring goals from impossible angles. Now he was training with an intensity that made grown men uncomfortable. One of the assistant coaches said, "I've been in football 40 years. I've seen talented kids. I've seen hard workers. Cristiano was the first time I saw both in one package. And the surgery? That's what fused them together." The medical checkups continued. Every month, Ronaldo would go back to the hospital for ECG monitoring, echocardiograms, stress tests. The doctors were amazed, not just at his recovery, at his improvement. His resting heart rate dropped, his cardiac output increased, his VO2 max, the measure of how efficiently your body uses oxygen, was climbing into elite athlete territory. "It's like his body overcompensated," one cardiologist noted in his file. "We removed a malfunction and the entire system optimized itself." But it wasn't the body doing the optimization, it was Ronaldo. Every meal planned, every workout maximized, every recovery protocol followed to the letter. He turned himself into a science experiment where the hypothesis was, how good can I become if I control everything? The answer would shock the world. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit like. The return was complete. The transformation was undeniable, but there was still one question everyone was asking. How would his body hold up long-term? What would future medical tests reveal about the boy whose heart was fixed by a laser?
Part 6. Long-term consequences. The champion's heart. July 2018. Turin, Italy. Cristiano Ronaldo walks into Juventus's medical center for his transfer medical examination. He's 33 years old. In football terms, that's ancient. Most players at that age are declining, thinking about retirement, managing chronic injuries. The doctors run the tests: blood work, cardiac imaging, body composition analysis, VO2 max, bone density, muscle mass. Every metric that determines whether a human body is still capable of elite athletic performance. The results come back. The medical staff looks at the numbers, looks at Ronaldo, looks back at the numbers. One of them says out loud what everyone's thinking. This is wrong. These can't be his results. But they were. Body fat, 7%. Elite athlete average, 10 to 11%. Muscle mass, 50%. Average professional footballer, 46%. Resting heart rate, low 40s. Olympic endurance athletes, low 40s.
Biological age, according to tissue and cardiovascular markers, 20 years old. A 33-year-old man with the body of someone in their early 20s. The media went crazy with the story. Headlines everywhere. Ronaldo's body defies age. Juventus signs a 20-year-old in a 33-year-old's career. But here's what they didn't understand. This wasn't magic. This was the long-term consequence of a 15-year-old kid deciding that his body would never betray him again. Let's rewind. After the surgery, Ronaldo didn't just return to football. He became obsessed with monitoring his heart. At first, it was fear-driven, the paranoia that tachycardia might come back. But over years, it evolved into something else: optimization. Every club he played for, Sporting, Manchester United, Real Madrid, Juventus, he demanded comprehensive cardiac monitoring. Not because he had symptoms, because he wanted data. Wanted to know exactly how his heart was performing under stress, during recovery, in different conditions. By the 2010s, wearable technology emerged. Devices that track heart rate variability, sleep quality, recovery metrics, stress levels, all in real time. Ronaldo was one of the first professional athletes to adopt them obsessively. His former fitness coach at Real Madrid revealed Cristiano wore a Whoop band before most people knew what it was. He'd come into training with detailed printouts of his heart rate data from the previous night. He'd say, "I only got 6 hours of deep sleep. We need to adjust today's training intensity." He managed himself like a Formula One team manages a car. That Whoop device, it measures something called heart rate variability, HRV. Essentially, the variation in time between each heartbeat. Higher HRV means better recovery, better stress management, better cardiovascular health. Ronaldo's HRV scores, even in his mid-30s, were comparable to athletes a decade younger. Sports scientists started studying him, not just casually. Academic research. Papers were published analyzing his physical longevity. One study from a Portuguese sports science university concluded Ronaldo's cardiovascular efficiency and recovery capacity suggest either genetic anomaly or unprecedented training optimization, possibly both.
But here's the secret. It wasn't genetic. The surgery proved that. His genetics gave him tachycardia, a malfunction. Everything after that was choice. Think about what most people do after a health scare. They get complacent. I survived, I'm lucky, let me live normally now. Ronaldo did the opposite. He treated his body like it was constantly one mistake away from breaking down. And that mindset, that paranoia turned productive, is what kept him at the top for 2 decades. The regular medical checkups continued throughout his career. Annual cardiac screenings, stress echocardiograms, Holter monitors that track heart rhythm for 24 to 48 hours. Every test came back clean. Every scan showed a heart that not only worked normally, but performed exceptionally. Cardiologists who reviewed his files noted something fascinating. The ablation site, where the laser had cauterized that problematic tissue, had healed perfectly. No scar complications, no rhythm abnormalities. It was as if the surgery had given him a factory reset heart, and he then proceeded to upgrade every other system around it. His diet became legendary. No alcohol, no sugary drinks, protein and vegetables timed precisely around training. 6 small meals a day instead of 3 large ones to keep metabolism constant. People mocked him for it. He's so boring, he never relaxes. But that boring routine is why he played at the highest level until 39, while most of his peers retired at 34. The cryo chambers, the recovery boots, the sleep optimization, the altitude training, every cutting-edge recovery technology that emerged, Ronaldo was first in line, not because he was rich, though that helped, but because he remembered what it felt like when his body failed him at 15. Manchester United's former team doctor said in an interview, "I've worked with hundreds of athletes. Cristiano was the only one who treated his body like a business. Every decision, what he ate, when he slept, how he recovered, was an investment in future performance. Most players retire because their bodies give out.
Cristiano retired because there were no more mountains to climb. The impact went beyond his own career. Young athletes, especially those with medical histories, started looking at Ronaldo as proof that a health scare doesn't mean the end. It can mean the beginning, if you respond correctly. Sports medicine conferences started using him as a case study, how cardiac intervention can extend athletic careers, the psychology of post-surgical athletic performance. His story became a teaching tool. The kid who almost lost everything at 15 became the blueprint for athletic longevity. And here's the beautiful irony. The surgery that was supposed to just let him play football turned him into the most physically optimized footballer in history. The laser that fixed a few millimeters of heart tissue ended up revolutionizing how he approached his entire body. 2022, Ronaldo's biological age testing showed 23. He was 37 years old. That's not luck. That's not genetics. That's a 15-year-old kid making a promise to himself on an operating table. If I get through this, I will never waste this body again, and keeping that promise for 22 years. Write in the comments what city you're from and how old you are. Curious to know who's watching this story. The physical legacy is undeniable, but what about the broader impact? How did this story influence other athletes facing similar challenges? And what does modern medicine say about the procedure that saved his career?
Part 7. Myths and Legends. Truth and Fiction. Every legend needs its myths. And Ronaldo's heart surgery, it spawned dozens. Go on any football forum, dive into YouTube comment sections, scroll through social media debates about CR7. You'll find them. The conspiracy theories, the wild speculation, the stories that sound just plausible enough to make you wonder, wait, could that be true? Let's start with the most persistent one. Ronaldo's surgery was experimental. Here's what actually happened. Catheter ablation in 2000 was cutting edge, yes, but not experimental. It had been used successfully for years on adults with arrhythmias. The experimental part was doing it on a 15-year-old elite athlete. That was rare. But the procedure itself, standard cardiology. But the myth persists. Why? Because people want drama. A standard medical procedure doesn't sound legendary. An experimental, risky, one-in-a-million operation, that's a movie plot. That's mythology. One version of the story claims Sporting used Ronaldo as a guinea pig for a new laser technology that wasn't FDA approved. Completely false. Another version says the surgeon who operated on him was later discredited for malpractice. Also false. The medical team at Sporting was highly reputable. Then there's the really wild one. Ronaldo got a heart transplant. Yes, people actually believe this. The theory goes, tachycardia was so severe that ablation wouldn't work, so they secretly gave him a donor heart. And the laser surgery story was a cover-up to avoid media frenzy and ethical questions about giving a teenager a transplant ahead of dying patients. Let's be clear, this is insane. Heart transplants leave massive surgical scars. Transplant patients take immunosuppressants for life to prevent rejection. Ronaldo has neither. His medical records from every club he's played for show the ablation site, not transplant markers. But conspiracy theorists gonna conspire. The internet being the internet, someone once posted evidence, a grainy photo allegedly showing Ronaldo with a chest scar. Experts pointed out it was either a Photoshop or a shadow from his pectoral definition. Didn't matter. The myth lives on. Here's a darker theory that circulated in Portuguese football circles back in the early 2000s. The tachycardia diagnosis was fake. Sporting invented it to hide Ronaldo from rival scouts. The logic is, Ronaldo was so talented that bigger clubs, Real Madrid, Barcelona, even Italian giants were circling. By claiming he had a serious heart condition requiring surgery and recovery, Sporting could keep him off the radar for crucial months, while they locked him into a better contract. Is there any evidence? Zero. Does it make sense logistically? Not really. You can't fake cardiac diagnostics that multiple doctors reviewed. But it speaks to how mythologized the story has become. People want intrigue, conspiracy, hidden agendas.
Another variation, the surgery was sponsored by a medical technology company as an advertisement.
This theory suggests that a laser ablation equipment manufacturer paid Sporting to use their device on Ronaldo, knowing that if he succeeded, they could market it as the technology that saved CR7. Again, no evidence, but in modern football, where everything's commercialized, it sounds just plausible enough to stick around. Then there's the metaphysical stuff. Online forums have people seriously debating whether the surgery unlocked something in Ronaldo's DNA, like the trauma triggered some dormant genetic potential, or the laser somehow stimulated superhuman recovery abilities. This is what happens when sports meets pseudoscience. But here's the most interesting myth, the one that's not really a myth at all. Without that surgery, we never would have known CR7. Fans say it, journalists say it, even some medical professionals say it. And unlike the conspiracies, this one is probably true. Think about the timeline. 2000, surgery happens. 2003, Ronaldo makes Sporting's first team. 2003, Manchester United signs him after a friendly where he destroys their defense. 2009, Real Madrid pays a then world record 94 million euros for him. Without the surgery, that timeline doesn't exist. If the tachycardia wasn't fixed, Ronaldo either dies young from cardiac arrest during a match, a horrifying but real possibility, or retires from professional football at 15 and becomes, what, a construction worker like his mother once feared? An amateur player in Madeira's local leagues? One popular YouTube documentary-style video dramatically states, "The laser that entered Ronaldo's heart changed football history." Clickbait? Sure, but also not wrong. Sports historians have actually analyzed this question. What would football look like without Ronaldo? Different Champions League winners? Different Ballon d'Or recipients? Different transfer market dynamics, different standards for athletic conditioning. The butterfly effect is massive. There's even a theory, proposed half-jokingly by a football analytics account, that Ronaldo's rivalry with Messi pushed both of them to unprecedented heights, and without Ronaldo, Messi might have had a less motivated, less legendary career. Remove the surgery, remove Ronaldo, remove the rivalry, and the entire 2008 to 2018 decade of football looks different. But let's end with the myths that Ronaldo himself has addressed. In rare interviews where he talks about the surgery, he shuts down the drama. It was a medical procedure. It worked. I recovered. That's it. He doesn't play into the mythology, doesn't embellish, almost seems annoyed that people make it bigger than it was. But that's the thing about legends. They don't need the subject's permission. The story grew because people need to believe that greatness comes from overcoming impossible odds. A skinny kid from a tiny island who almost died at 15 but became the most physically perfect footballer in history? That's not just a medical success story. That's mythology. And whether Ronaldo likes it or not, that mythology is now part of his legacy. The truth is simpler than the myths, but somehow more powerful. A teenager had a heart problem. Doctors fixed it. He decided never to waste the second chance. Everything else, the 900-plus career goals, the 5 Champions Leagues, the 5 Ballon d'Ors, the 2 decades at the top, that came from choice, not miracle. But in a world obsessed with superhuman athletes, maybe people need the myths, need to believe in experimental surgeries and genetic unlocking and destiny written in operating rooms. The reality is better. A boy decided to be great. His body tried to stop him. Medicine gave him a chance. He took it and ran faster than anyone else ever has. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit like. The myths will continue. The debates will never end. But one thing is certain. That surgery in 2000 changed more than just Ronaldo's life. It changed football itself. Let's talk about the legacy.
Part 8. Conclusion.
From operating room to legend. 2024. Somewhere in Saudi Arabia, Cristiano Ronaldo stands in front of a mirror in his private gym. He's 39 years old, still training, still competing, still breaking records that shouldn't exist for someone his age. He lifts his shirt, looks at his chest. No scar. The catheter ablation left no mark. That was the beauty of the procedure. But he knows it's there, somewhere deep inside, that tiny spot of cauterized tissue, a few millimeters of his heart that were burned away to save the rest. He places his hand over his chest, feels the rhythm. Steady, strong, the heart of a champion. Not because genetics gave it to him, they actually tried to take it away, but because 24 years ago, a 15-year-old kid refused to accept that his dream was over. This is where the story ends, and where every other story begins. See, Ronaldo's journey from that Lisbon operating room to becoming one of the greatest athletes in human history isn't just a sports story. It's a blueprint, a proof of concept, evidence that when your body betrays you, your mind can still win. Think about what this story represents for millions of people watching around the world. Young athletes diagnosed with heart conditions who think their careers are over. Parents whose kids need cardiac procedures and are terrified. Anyone who's faced a health crisis and wondered if they'd ever be the same again. Ronaldo became their answer. Yes, you can come back. You can be better than before. Sporting medical professionals cite him constantly now, not as a medical miracle, the surgery was standard, but as a case study in psychological excellence. How to transform trauma into fuel, the mindset of post-surgical athletic excellence. His story is taught in sports psychology courses, in cardiac rehabilitation programs, in mental performance coaching. But here's what makes it truly powerful. He never tried to be inspirational. Ronaldo didn't talk about the surgery much, didn't write a memoir about overcoming adversity, didn't do motivational speaking tours. He just lived it, let his actions speak. Trained harder than everyone else, lasted longer than everyone else, achieved more than everyone else. And in doing that, he proved something more valuable than any speech could, that resilience isn't about what you say, it's about what you do when nobody's watching. It's about the 6 a.m. training sessions, the meal plans, the recovery protocols, the obsessive monitoring of every physical metric, the refusal to accept decline. There's a generation of athletes now who grew up watching Ronaldo and learning from his example. They might not even know about the surgery, but they see a 39-year-old man playing professional football at the highest level, and they think, maybe I don't have to retire at 34. Maybe I can push further. The medical impact is real too. After Ronaldo's success, catheter ablation for young athletes became more accepted, less stigmatized. Clubs became more willing to invest in players with managed cardiac conditions. The conversation shifted from "this ends careers" to "this is treatable." Sporting Lisbon's medical facility where the surgery happened became something of a pilgrimage site for football historians and medical students. They want to see where it happened, the room where a laser changed football history. It's just a normal hospital room now, but the mythology gives it weight. And let's talk about that mythology one more time, because it matters.
Yes, people exaggerate the story. Yes, conspiracy theories exist. Yes, some fans make it sound like divine intervention. But underneath all the noise is a truth so powerful it doesn't need embellishment. A kid from a tiny island had a dream. His body tried to kill that dream. Happened. The numbers tell part of the story. 900+ career goals, 5 Champions League titles, 5 Ballon d'Ors, records that might never be broken. But numbers can't capture what it took to get there. The fear overcome, the discipline maintained, the promise kept. Somewhere right now, there's a 15-year-old kid lying in a hospital bed waiting for cardiac surgery. Maybe they play football, maybe basketball, maybe they're not an athlete at all, just someone whose heart doesn't work right and needs fixing. And someone, maybe a parent, maybe a doctor, maybe a friend, will tell them about Cristiano Ronaldo, about the surgery at 15, about coming back stronger, about refusing to let a medical diagnosis define your ceiling. That kid might not break football records, might not become famous, might not even become a professional athlete, but they'll have proof that survival isn't the end, it's the beginning. That's Ronaldo's real legacy. Not the trophies, not the goals, not the wealth or fame. The legacy is this. He showed that when life puts you on an operating table at your most vulnerable moment, you can either survive or you can decide what comes next. Ronaldo decided, and that decision echoed through decades. So here we are, 2024, a 39-year-old man still playing professional football, still training like he's 20, still competing like he's got something to prove. Maybe he does. Maybe that 15-year-old kid who woke up from anesthesia and promised himself he'd never waste a second chance, maybe he's still there, still driving, still refusing to quit. The mirror reflects back a body that defies age, science, and expectations. But if you look closer, past the muscles, past the perfect conditioning, past the physical perfection, you'd see the real story. A heart that was broken and fixed, a mind that turned fear into fuel, a boy from Madeira who became a legend not because he was perfect, but because when perfection was taken from him, he built it back himself. That's the story. That's the legacy. That's why we're here, 24 years later, still talking about a surgery that lasted 3 hours and changed football forever. From operating room to legend, from tachycardia to triumph, from a scared kid on a gurney to a name that will be remembered centuries from now. Cristiano Ronaldo, CR7, the man with the champion's heart. Not because he was born with one, but because he refused to accept anything less. And it all started with a laser, a steady hand, and a 15-year-old's determination to prove that a broken heart can still beat stronger than anyone else's. Write in the comments what city you're from and how old you are, and if this story inspired you in any way, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because somewhere, someone needs to know, the surgery isn't the end. It's just the beginning of what you choose to become. Don't forget to subscribe and hit like. Thank you for watching this journey.